Yeah, so my name's Lisa Bird and I'm the Copyright and Licensing Advisor in Libraries and Learning Resources. I'm a professional librarian as well. And this presentation was also produced by my co-colleague Jane Barnett, and he's one of our research skills advisors in our research skills team. Just see how I move on. There we go. So just a quick outline of today's session then. So just a little bit of information about the University of Birmingham for those who don't know much about us. The university's initial response to ChatGPT, the creation of an AI session that was aimed at researchers and the framework that was created to support that session, the feedback that we've had from people that have attended the sessions, and then a review of AI tools licensing and an AI licensing review tool that we've created to help with that, and then our future, where we're going in this area. So the University of Birmingham was founded in 1900 as England's first civic university. We're currently 80th in the QS World University Rankings. We have over 42,000 students, so quite a big university. And over 90% of our research is rated as world leading or internationally excellent. So we are kind of quite big on the research side. And due to that, we have produced over the years 10 Nobel Prize winners. So the initial response to ChatGPT, and I'm sure this is true of many of your institutions as well, was very much related to teaching, learning and assessment. There was a big concern everywhere that students would use these tools as a way to kind of gain the assessment process. And so due to that, guidance was produced ready for that start of the academic year in September 23. And that involved producing the guide works for framework on generative AI within learning and teaching assessment, and that was support for the teaching staff and based on the Russell Group principles, and as well as releasing student-facing guidance on using generative AI tools. The teams that were involved in producing these documents, three different divisions, including my division, were involved in this, and they were all based in libraries and learning resources. So the AI tools for research assessment, because we saw that there was a lot being done for our taught students and for those that were in the teaching side and our academics teaching, but there wasn't a lot being produced at this stage to support our researchers who were starting to look at these AI tools and thinking, how can they help me save time or how can they help me produce my research? So the initial thinking that James had was to produce a session where we would look at the research cycle and then try and map different tools, AI tools, to those different parts of the research cycle. So one's thinking about kind of writing styles, some about how to review the literature, and like link those tools up and do a session based on that. That seemed like a good idea at the time. Um, and then it was decided with a bit more thought that this wouldn't be viable as a session. Part of the reason was there are so many tools, as already been discussed today, so many tools out there, and it would be difficult for us to keep up to date with the different tools that were available. We do expect that over time, some big players will come to the top, and then those will be the tools that will be seen as the ones to use. But at this stage, there was just lots out there, and no one tool had kind of really risen to the top. And many of these tools are available either on a freemium or a subscription basis if you want the more advanced features. So we were kind of conscious about the fact that we didn't want to recommend tools that would put a cost onto the end user individually. And how would we as an institution support potentially the purchase of these new tools as well? And James asked us in the copyright and licensing team to review the terms and conditions of subset of the tools that he'd been considering for part of this session. And they raised a number of red flags to us in their terms of their licenses. For example, providing their AI firm with license to materials that are uploaded. So there's a big copyright issue straight away there. So instead, we had a discussion and we moved to the second idea for the session. So to switch the focus instead to rather than saying these are the different tools you can use for these different parts of the research cycle, to instead give academics themselves and researchers themselves the tools to navigate that landscape and to evaluate for themselves the tools that they could be using. We felt that this would empower the researcher and to increase their literacy in AI evaluation. And it also unburdened us as the librarians from having to know about every single tool that was out there that somebody could potentially want to use. So this became then a 1 hour online session, which was marketed as being an introduction to AI tools for researchers. This was still very much at the early stages at the time when these tools were very new to everybody still. It gets advertised as part of the Research Skills Team Open programme. So this is a programme that's aimed at PGRs and academic staff members and has a number of workshops throughout it. And the session is normally run by two members of the research skills team. One is presenting the session and the other is monitoring the chat. If there's any questions in the chat that we don't feel able to answer during the session or don't have time to, then we'll go back to the person, to the all of the cohort afterwards and send them the answers to those questions. Because obviously this is a new area and we don't always have the correct answer straight away to hand. And so I'll just give you an overview of the session now and how it works and what's included in the session. So first of all, there's an introduction to the different AI tools that are out there, such as whether they're narrow ones or generative AI tools and those definitions, the benefits and the risks of using AI tools in your research. And then we talk through the self-evaluation framework that they can use to evaluate the tools for themselves. And then there's a demonstration of some of the tools and in the context of showing them how that framework would work with that particular tool. This was partially developed by adapting the framework that was outlined in an article by Michael Upshaw. The reference for this will be at the end of the slides. And then also by adding to that framework questions that we felt were very pertinent from a copyright perspective, from a research perspective, in the era of generative AI. So what questions do we include in the framework? We've grouped them by theme to begin with. So the different themes are the relevance of the tool, the prompting and the output of it, the policy compliance, the corpus, the costs, and the terms and conditions and data security. And I'm going to take you through each one of these in turn to sort of give you an idea about what we covered during the session. So first of all is the relevance of the tool. So is this tool necessary to perform the task for the research? Sometimes people are just really keen to get started with something and use something, but actually you don't really need to just because, this is the new thing. Sometimes the old traditional ways are just as good. So are you using it just because you want to try something new or because you really need it for something and it can actually serve you in your research in a meaningful manner? And has that tool been developed for that particular function? There's also the risk sometimes that some of these tools could potentially prevent somebody from developing some skills that they need for their research, especially for our PGR cohort. For example, coding skills. We know that some of these AI tools can produce some very good code, but you still need to know some coding skills yourself, potentially so that you can evaluate the accuracy of that coding that's been generated. Prompting and output. So we talk about how to prompt them. Does the information that it's producing seem accurate and is it useful to you? And we talk about the tap and taste methods and using that as a way to prompt the tool and evaluate the outputs. Obviously, funded research has a lot of policy documents that goes with it, and we need to ensure that we're compliant with any of our funders. So does this go outside the use of those funder policies? Does it meet the UKRI funding applications, and does it meet with their funder policies there? If you're wanting to publish your research afterwards, are you going to have any issues at that stage because of the AI tools that you've used? Wiley, for instance, have recently released some information about use of AI tools for their authors, and saying that really, if you put your preprint into a tool and give them lots of license to that, then really don't bother submitting to their journals anymore. So there's those risks involved as well. And also, does it meet our own guidance at the university and our regulations and policies? For example, we have lots of guidelines on what editorial help a PGR thesis could have, and that would now have to put in information about if they had used an AI tool into their thesis submission as well. Obviously, it's really important to understand the corpus of an AI tool that you're using. What has it been trained on? What is driving it? And is that going to be useful to you in the type of research that you're doing, or is it missing content that you need to have included to be able to get useful information back from it? So, for example, we're seeing lots of publishers now creating their own AI tools, but are we limiting ourselves then to one publisher's material and content? And actually, do we need a range of publishers' content to really do our research? And does it have any issues with biases because of the limited corpus that's been included? Obviously, there's a cost to a lot of these tools, especially if you want the more advanced features. So, how will you pay for this is obviously one of the issues there. And how much can you achieve before those costs start to incur? And what would you do if costs started to incur later on as people moved and changed their models? Could you still afford it then? And obviously for me, this is a big one, the terms and conditions and data security elements. Is it clear what, from the terms and conditions, what the tool does with your inputs and the outputs that it generates? Who are you giving a license to that information? Do you need to own the copyright before you can include an input? Because lots of researchers are wanting to do their systematic reviews, they're wanting to upload lots of journal articles into these tools so that it can do the analysis for them or some of the analysis for them. So are there issues around that? Is that information captured? Is it added to the training data? And does it restrict what you can do with the outputs? Because we do see that in some of the licenses. Um, if you're using the AI tool to analyze your research data, do you have that ethical approval to do so? Especially if you're using information from live participants or human participants. Is that part of their data management plan? Have they got ethical, is their ethical review cover that, especially because obviously a lot of our researchers had started their PhDs and done their ethical reviews before these tools were launched. And now they're looking at it thinking, oh, well, maybe I could use this now. Do they need to go back and look at their ethics review to complete that? And are they thinking about data protection issues and what they're uploading into these tools? Um, and as we mentioned, if you are uploading third-party material, so party written by another individual, do you have the permission to do that? So the attendance figures at the sessions has been very good. For example, in this academic year so far, the average number of attendees is over just over twice the amounts that we would get for a normal session in our open program for researchers. So the sessions are very popular at the moment, showing that this is an area of interest for our researchers. The feedback from the sessions, the part in the kind of lilac-y colour, which is on the left side of each area, is from last academic year, and the other side in the more orange colour is from this academic year. That is showing that we have lots of people saying that they would recommend this. We do have a little bit of disagree that's kind of all agree or disagree there. And we think partly some of that can be sometimes because people are becoming more confident in this area. But on the whole, we're still getting lots of people agreeing to the fact that they would recommend it to others. So that's very positive. And here are some quotes that we've had from feedback from the sessions, that they have found it useful as a way to evaluate the AI tools for themselves and if it's suitable for their research or not. It's made them aware of issues that they may not have considered previously, such as copyright and ethics. But what's quite useful as well is we're still getting in that last quote there, people who still want that original session idea of taking that research cycle and saying this tool could be used for this and this tool you can use for that. People still, in many respects, want that clarity, what they can, which tools they can use, and which ones would be useful for them. So it's good to note that. And I do think in the future, maybe at some time that we would get to that stage when we have more tools and we have them available, but I don't think we're there yet. And I think this framework works very well. We currently we got involved. Now the really good thing actually, we were talking about before, how do you get out there and show your knowledge about being experts in AI? And the one really good thing about this session is it has raised the awareness of the library having knowledge in this field. And so due to these sessions, we did have an academic contacting us afterwards because they wanted some assistance with some funded research they were doing, and they were looking at how AI tools could potentially be used to support rapid reviews of the literature. And as part of that, we were asked to review licenses for 8 different products. And so due to that, we created an AI licensing review tool so that this was a standardized way of reviewing all of those licenses. And so each license could be compared with one another for the different tools. Um, and the results of that AI tools license review was very interesting. These tools were tools that you will have heard of already. You will be aware of them, I'm sure. And they are tools that are being talked about as being tools that can support research. But when we did the review of them, we were very concerned about the terms and conditions that lots of these tools had. There was indemnification concerns, so that's when you're kind of insuring the vendor, if there is a legal case brought forward through to the use of the tool, that you will cover all of their costs, and quite often on an unlimited cost basis, which means you're potentially putting your organisation at risk there of high legal costs in the future. Now, most of our product licenses that we've received, those from JISC, for example, those would normally say the publisher and the vendor indemnifies us as the library or the university, rather than the other way around. So that was very concerning to us. And at our institution, that would need to get signed off by a much higher level, a senior member of staff to take on that. We would normally send licenses that said that to our legal services department first. They weren't meeting the WACAG 2.2 AA accessibility requirement that we as a public sector body have for our online services. Most of the time, they either weren't meeting this current standard, so they were meeting a lesser one, which was positive, at least they were part way there. But many of them were actually just silent and didn't have an accessibility statement of any kind. There's also data protection concerns. Many of these services are hosted in the US, and some of the tools quite clearly said that they didn't meet European or UK data protection requirements. So some of them were very upfront of that, some of them had slightly different wording around it, but the essential thing was that they weren't saying that they could meet those requirements. So obviously that's a big concern for us. And then there was also the rights clearance concerns. Quite a lot of the time, when you looked at the license agreements, the terms and conditions stated that you were giving a non-exclusive, universal license, worldwide license, to allow them to do anything that they wanted with the material once you had submitted the material to that device, that tool. So that was very concerning for us as well, or that you would need to have the copyright in the item to be able to upload it to the tool. The feedback from the researcher who we did this work for found our work very useful and valuable, and found it useful to have both myself and staff from the research skills team involved in this. So we covered the different elements for him and we worked together collaboratively. And what I do like about this quote is that it shows that collaboration between ourselves, the skills team, and the researcher, and bringing together all of our knowledge and how useful that was for them. So where next for us in the library then? So we're in development of creating an AI for academic writing workshop. And the research skills team were also considering how do they embed AI literacy into other sessions? Because obviously this is really a thing if you're doing writing workshops, if you're doing information seeking, if you're doing something about systematic reviews. This isn't just a one-off session really. This is about how do you embed that into all of those different sessions instead. We're going to be launching some new web guidance about the evaluative framework so that people can see it there. So if they're not attending the sessions, they can still get access to that information at any time. We'll go back to it. Why looking at terms and conditions of AI tools are important, and also the AI license review tool. And we have an in-depth version of that, which is the version that we did for the research project that has about 36 questions, I think, on it. But we also have a quick version now as well that somebody could use, which only has, I think it's 9 questions on it, which are the main questions that somebody would need to look at. We also have an AI tools project where we're working with one of the university's graduate management trainees. And the idea of this project is to look at emerging AI search and discovery products. So we've selected a shortlist of 3 products to look at and to get feedback on. They all do slightly different things. So it's going to be interesting to see which services and which tools our researchers find useful. And it's not necessarily about that particular tool itself, it's about the features and the functionality of those tools that they're finding useful. But we are having some issues getting that off the ground because we have licensing concerns. So that has been a barrier right at the start of this. And then if we can get over those concerns, what products in the potential future would we want to purchase and what features do they need to have based on the feedback of this project? We're also feeding back in wherever we can into the development of institutional guidelines and on the framework on use of AI for research. So we're trying to get into those higher level discussions and influence those. And we're also awaiting the outcome of the UK government consultation on AI and copyright. So at the start of this year, the government had a consultation on this. Many of you will have seen about this on the front pages of newspapers with people like Paul McCartney and Alan John taking issue with some of the things that were put forward in that consultation. We submitted our report back to that and we fed back into that consultation as well. So we're waiting to see what the impact of that is and how that may impact on our advice and guidance to our users in the future too. So this now is very much over to you for any questions or comments or thoughts. And just in case you did want those references of the couple of things that we mentioned in the presentation as well, they're there for you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was absolutely fantastic. I want to. I've got so many questions based on that, and I also want to make sure that everyone in the chat and in the Q&A has a chance to ask them as well. But one of the things that I really wanted to return to first was if I might just go back to the slide if that's all right with you. But
Yeah.
this slide here, I think, is so crucial and is something that I was really glad to see because it's something that we kind of touch on in the white paper itself. But this is such a good illustration of why librarians are such a crucial component of kind of the AI strategy at any institution. And that's not me saying that, therefore the library should buy AI tools or therefore the library is responsible for finding the money for that. But it's why librarians need to have a seat at the table because the thing that you were talking about around indemnification and already knowing how other contracts that you have with other vendors work and having the expertise to identify that, to flag it up, to identify issues with data protection. That to me just speaks to why it's so crucial, actually, that librarians have a really loud voice in this conversation.
And I think that's why we're trying to produce something that other people can use from this, because
Yeah,
we very much appreciate the fact that we're in a lucky position at our institution that we have people like myself to review the licenses, and we know that that's not necessarily true at every institution, or those people may have many other roles as well, and this may just be a small part of theirs, so they don't necessarily have the time to have and space to think about this and
yeah,
how it impacts on AI tools in depth. So that's why we're trying to produce something that hopefully other people in the sector can use afterwards and try and support the sector in this area. So in the license review tool that we're creating and hopefully we'll have online in the next few weeks, we've actually put all of the questions, but then we've also put guidance about why we're asking those questions and the key things that you need to look for in a license. So, because otherwise, if you just say, "All right, is indemnification okay?" Lots of people won't
yeah.
understand why. What is that question? What's that about? Why would that matter to me? So we're just
100%.
trying to put a bit more information out there, and we do have the much larger review documents that covers everything you could ever want to think about when you're looking at an AI tool and the license for it. But we also produced a quicker one as well, so people can just see those red flag issues straight away, such as the indemnification concern, which is a massive red flag. And other institutions may deal with that in a different way, but at our institution, that would go to legal services for review first. They would provide advice and guidance, and then it would go to a senior member of the university for sign-in. And I imagine that would be true at other institutions too. I can't imagine we're alone on this. I
Yeah,
think we have concerns that not everybody is looking at the terms of the licenses and people are potentially recommending tools. And that was one of the big things for us. I'm personally the sort of person who was like, come on, like at Web 2.0, many years ago, let's use all these
yeah,
tools and everything. I'm very much an early adopter of tools and want to get in there and see what they do. But we also do need to think about our AI governance. And I think that's something that institutions don't talk about enough is their AI governance. And really part of that is reading the terms and conditions of those licenses. And I think there is a risk if we as institutions don't purchase these tools in the future and don't make them available, it means that a lot of what we call shadow AI would start to take place, where people will just use those tools and they'll be signing up. to
Yeah.
all sorts of things, and we don't necessarily know where that content would even necessarily come from, if it adds security concerns. And you also have to think about potential commercialization of research, and is it going to prevent that in the future? If someone's added something to one of these services, that then they want to use as part of a patent application later on, and is it going to impact on that commercialization of research too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you've just raised there as well around this shadow AI, or essentially people going and using free AI as well, is that I'm sure everyone on the call has heard that old kind of adage of if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And that for me is a really big concern if we get to this point where everyone's using ChatGPT, but they're all using it for free. There's no guarantee that that data won't be misused or protected in the way that you would expect it to be. You mentioned there that it's not compliant with European protection laws and stuff like that. So that's all a very big concern as well.
And
Uh,
I think for me, it's like if you do have tools that people can use, how are you making your research community and your students aware of that? So I know from my own conversations with academics and researchers is sometimes they're not aware of the fact that we have a ring-fenced Copilot subscription at the university. So they're using other tools because on the free versions, and God knows what terms and conditions they've signed up to, but they're doing that because they just don't realize that we actually have a nice ring-fenced tool. And then as soon as I mention this to them, like, wow, how do I get access to this? Where,
yeah,
where is that, please? So I think whoever is purchasing those tools as well needs to ensure that that information is going out there. And how do you present that information to people?
mhm,
And how do you, keep on marketing that to people as well? Because, academics are nomads. They're constantly changing. You've got people coming and going constantly. The same for your student population. You get new master's students every single year. So how
yeah,
do you keep that message going to ensure that every new iteration of people at your institution are aware of those same messages? Because I think sometimes there can be that fatiguing. We've told everybody once, surely they know that we have this. And it's
yeah.
like, no, these people are changing on a constant basis. So your messaging on it needs to be constantly being out
Yeah. And I
well.
suppose not only are the people changing, but the model changes every year. It seems to be at that kind of we're still in that exponential phase where every single time a new model comes out, we go, oh my God, it can do this new incredible thing. And this isn't something that we've had in our training yet, but now we need to account for this. It's a constant moving target, I suppose. Um, but I think everyone on the call will really value the fact that, like you say, you want to make this available to other people at other institutions to make use of. And we certainly at TFS we'll keep an eager eye out for that because I think that would be fantastic to shout about when it comes out. Because I think people will really
Yeah, I mean, DISC already have like a little checklist for procurement, but that
yeah.
is very much aimed at when you're doing that larger IT procurement process
Mhm.
rather than when you're looking at individual smaller tools and
Yeah.
services, and how they will support you in our normal kind of licensing reviews. So it is aimed at that kind of like I'm buying a bigger sort of product and I'm going out to tender.
Mhm.
The questions are still very useful though, and they can still definitely be used in that way. But we have sent our tool to JISC for review as well to see if they can
Ah,
give us some
yeah.
feedback to how we can improve upon that too. I see there's a question in the Q&A about is
Yes.
sustainability of the AI tool included in the framework sessions? That would come under the ethical part of it. So when we're looking at the ethics of the tool, that would be included there. So that's the point where we start to talk about that side of things. But yeah, it is definitely, I mean, JISC did a really great document recently about sustainability as well that we've all been reading of AI tools. So yeah, it's definitely something that we include within those sessions. And I see there's another question about have any of our reviews of the license terms related to I stopped us from subscribing to any particular online resources. At the moment, that's stopping us from starting our trial of some online resources because normally, to be honest, normally we don't look at terms and conditions for trials because we're dealing with providers and it's normally content based and we kind of expect the terms and conditions to be okay. Very rarely are there something afterwards that surprise us. Um, but with this, because we're so aware of the fact that people might be uploading third-party content into the tools or their own more sensitive content into these tools, we're taking an extra precautionary measure and reviewing these licenses before we go to trial. And at the moment, there's three tools that we want to trial, and we can't trial any of them yet because we're still in negotiations over the license. So none of the standard licenses for any of those tools currently meet our requirements and needs. A couple of them, it's because they're just silent on a couple of things. So it may be that actually they will be suitable for us in the end, but we just need some clarification. And that's because they're silent on what is done with uploaded content. So that's what we're looking for clarification on. Does it get added to the model in any way? Is it just looked at and deleted immediately? So we're just trying to get some clarification on what's happens with that. And there's sometimes different licenses available for some tools. So for one of the tools, there is a disk license available, but there is also their normal standard terms and conditions license available too. So the disk license is much better, but it is silent at the moment on that, what happens to uploaded content. And I think it's because people aren't thinking of asking those questions yet, because we're used to content tools where we just get given content rather than a tool that we're uploading information into. So I think on the licensing side, we need to think a bit more about that when we're asking these questions.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for answering those questions. I'm just going to check the chat as well, just to make sure that we haven't missed anything. Um, No, it just looks like everyone's agreeing that that was a fantastic session. I think everyone, like I say, everyone's going to keep an eager eye out for that being released, and certainly, like I say, we'll want to shout about it when it's out because I think that'll be enormously useful to folks in the sector. So, thank you so much, Lisa, for coming along today and for sharing that. We really do appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to that with interest.
Thank you.
Thank you.